The medical model of disability is, I'm broken, I've got to be fixed. The independent living model is, if I can't access something in the community's broken, and we got to figure out how to fix the community. People with disabilities often are the best experts on what people with disabilities need. Instead of asking questions, you made an assumption.
That's right.
But if you don't ask questions, you deny him that dignity of risk, of taking a chance.
You're listening to the NEI Pioneer Podcast. This podcast is all about sharing the authentic stories of the people in our region. And on today's episode, we have John Guingrich, who is the president and CEO of the League. If you aren't familiar, the League is an organization based here in Fort Wayne that has been advocating for people with any disability for over 75 years. In this episode, John shares his perspective growing up with a disability, as well as the challenges that he faced and what he learned along the way. He also shares more about what the League does and how he uses his experience to positively impact others. If you would like to learn more about this organization and what John does, be sure to check out the description below. But for now, let's jump into John and Jonathan's conversation.
John Guingrich, it is a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks,
I have to tell you, so you and I had met at one of the rock meetings first, just kind of casual, passerby, and then I had beer with you, with Ryan and Nick.
You did.
I may have had a couple of beers, if I remember correctly.
I can't confirm nor deny that.
It was, yes, well, you can confirm. And it was excellent because Ryan, he was telling me about you, and I don't know if Ryan told you this. His way of working me has always been to make it appear that it's my idea. That's what I'm on to him as much as he's on to me. So when we were over at Penny Drip and you and I had met and we were talking, I leaned over to him and I said, I have to have this guy on the show. I got it, because you're so inspiring. And he leaned over to me and he goes, I know. That's why I invited you for beer. So somehow, shout out to Ryan. He's taking credit for this somewhere.
All right.
So you're president and CEO of the League.
Right.
Would you mind just quickly giving an overview of the League and what your role is there? And because what I'd like to do today is, you're such an inspiring guy. I'd like to take this two-faceted, and one facet being your growing up in your family life, and the other thing is about the League. But let's give an overview of the League and what you do there.
Cool. So the League's been around since 1950. Actually, in 1949, Helen Keller came to Fort Wayne and raised money to serve people who are blind. A group of citizens in the community decided we needed to better serve people who are blind, so they convinced Helen Keller to come here. She spoke at Northside High School and raised like the first $7,000 for seed money for our budget.
Wow.
We stayed as a blind serving organization until the 80s. And then we received a federal grant that we still get today that makes us what's called a Center for Independent Living. And that changed who we are. So we went from serving just people who are blind to being an organization that serves any person with any significant disability of any age in Northeast Indiana to help them maintain their independence. And what makes us unique is kind of how we're operated and our service delivery. So the idea is people with disabilities often are the best experts on what people with disabilities need, kind of that lived experience.
Sure.
So 65% of our board of directors are people with disabilities. 100% of my leadership team are people with disabilities, and then about 75% of our staff are people with disabilities. The idea is, and the example I always give is, when you're a kid in school, if you have a question about something, probably the last person you ask is the teacher. You ask somebody else who's going through it, right? Just like you are.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the model. That's the independent living model, is that oftentimes your peers know what you're going through.
Well, with those statistics that you're giving me, how common is that? I would assume that's not very common, right?
It's not. So there are only 10 organizations like ours in the state. There's about 400 across the country. But that's not a typical service delivery model for a disability serving organization.
No.
For us, it's a requirement of our federal grant. And it puts us in line with this independent living philosophy of people with disabilities leading the way for people with disabilities.
Yeah. Okay. And, it's interesting because when you're talking about some of these statistics, I'll tell you, we pulled Callie and Hannah had pulled us some statistics. I think they were off of your site, but these are incredible and they're scary. So I wanted to bounce. I'm just going to read off a bunch of 50% of households at the federal property level in Allen County include one or more people with disabilities. That's unbelievable. 1 in 4 people with disabilities report never leaving their homes because of lack of accessible, affordable, and adequate transportation. 1 in 4. 82% of people with disabilities are not employed, and in Indiana, only 23.8% of those who are working are employed full-time. Mm-hmm. For minorities, the jobless rate is almost 150% greater than their white peers.
Yeah.
And the last one I've got on here, and please excuse me, like we talked about, I'm getting over the plague.
Yeah,
so
you're
I'm
good, man.
227% higher rate of high school incompletion among people with disabilities than their non-disabled peers.
Yep.
That's unbelievable.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Can you talk to that? Because why is that population neglected that way? I that's the way I would phrase it. I don't know if that's right.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So when you think about the population of people with disabilities in the schema of our country, it wasn't that long ago that people with disabilities, if your disability was significant enough, you were sent away to an institution. You weren't told to stay home. You weren't told to be a productive member of society or to go to school. You were sent to a nursing home
or encouraged, right?
Or encouraged, yeah. Or you were encouraged. Your parents were encouraged to send you to a mental institution or a nursing home or some other institution where you could get the proper care that you need. The medical model of disability is, I'm broken, I've got to be fixed. The independent living model is, if I can't access something in the community's broken, and we got to figure out how to fix the community, because the community should be accessible to everybody. You mentioned employment. So the employment statistic has changed a little bit.
Okay.
Actually, the pandemic helped.
Really?
People could work remote. People with disabilities were often asking for remote work for a number of reasons, whether it be transportation to and from work, or care in your home to get you out of bed, to get you to work. When we suddenly sent everybody home, we proved to companies, you can actually have people work remote and it can be successful. So more people with disabilities started applying for jobs and getting jobs, because there wasn't that question of, well, can you get to work? Yeah, I can get to work. I can get to my living room or my office, and I can do stuff. Transportation's a big one, and some of my best peers, my board chairs in the transportation industry. But transportation's a tough one. Most transportation runs, well, our CityLink service runs from roughly 6 a.m. till 7, 8 p.m. I think 8 p.m. is their last pickup typically. So that limits you to a daytime job. You're not working second shift because you can get to your job, but you can't get home. You're not working third shift because you can't get to your job, but if you get there, you might be able to get home. So it limits you in the jobs you can apply for.
If you don't mind, I'd like to switch gears and talk about you personally a little bit here. Your family, you're growing up.
Yep.
Your personal disability. Yep. I'd like the
background on that. My disability is from birth. You can obviously see it impacts my arms. I also wear a prosthetic leg on the left because I have a short leg. I was raised, for the most part, very non-disabled, if that makes sense. So I went to a preschool that kids with disabilities went to. And then as I started public school, when I was in third grade, this law came about.
Where did you grow up?
Right here.
Okay.
Born and raised. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act came about when I was in third grade. Until third grade, I was bussed across town because every kid within the school system went to this special wing of this one school where, regardless of your disability, that's where your education was.
Was that around 70, in the 70s, late 70s?
Yeah, like 73.
Oh, okay.
73, 76, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Must be 76. Yeah. So I had two groups of friends. I had my neighborhood group of friends, non-disabled, and I had the group of friends that I had in that wing of the school. But my parents raised me that the word can't didn't exist by itself. If they asked me to do something, never was the word I can't, or rarely. It may be I can't right now, or I can't yet, but not I can't. God love our family doctor, who's now retired probably 10 years ago. He convinced my parents early on. He said, you let John try anything he wants to try. You make him try anything he needs to try. Because if you don't, you're going to restrict him, and I'm going to have to tie you up to a chair and make you understand what he's going through.
Wow.
He's a great guy. And so that's what my parents did. Anything I wanted to try. My dad taught me how to drive a 5-speed when I was 18 years old with a prosthetic leg and my arms.
I wonder, as you were growing up, how much of that felt like like, at what point are you able to discern this is tough love or this is something I need? Did you ever balance that out?
I probably didn't realize that until I was in college, high school, college, because my parents were like, "Yeah, go try it. Let's go try it." My parents, we traveled. Back in the 70s, the vacation was a driving vacation. It was wherever you could drive to. Yeah.
You guys didn't have a station wagon, did you?
We had a van. So,
all right. That's
and
it
was traveling to amusement parks. And my dad and I were into roller coasters, so we'd ride roller coasters. And there's a park in Ohio that shall remain nameless that almost had the last name of Guingrich, because on one day they said, "I'm sorry, sir, your son can't ride." And this was before any laws that gave equal access. And my dad went, "Why?" And they went, "Well, he can't hold on." And if this is great, if the roller coaster gets stuck at the top, he won't be able to get down. And my dad went, "Well, I'm concerned that your big safety thing is he won't be able to get down." And my dad goes, "I'll get him down. We'll figure that out."
Yeah.
And we argued. We stood in the middle of a blacktop for an hour discussing with multiple levels of managers why I should be able to ride.
And how old are you at this point?
I am probably 10.
Okay.
Yeah, about 10. And ultimately my dad didn't have anything backing him up in the way of law. But he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "Tell me about the old guy who just got on, who can't hold on."
Yeah, right.
Or tell me about the guy with the heart issue. And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "My son's disability is physical, and you can see it." Instead of asking questions, you made an assumption.
That's right.
Don't make assumptions. Ask questions, and we'll show you how he can hold on, and we'll show you how he can get down. But if you don't ask questions, you deny him that dignity of risk, of taking a chance.
Dignity of risk. I love that.
Jumping in here to shout out one of our podcast sponsors, Sweetwater. Now, just for some reference, without Sweetwater, our podcast would sound something like this. It would also look something like this. Enough of that. Sweetwater is the nation's largest destination for music gear, as well as your one-stop shop for all things podcasting. We personally worked with them to fill out this studio, and I can say from experience, they are the friendliest team to be working with. You can receive personalized gear advice as well as technical support to get your gear up and running. We honestly cannot recommend them enough. So if you're a music person, a content creator, a podcaster, etc., make sure to check them out in the description below.
Where do you think that tenacity, I guess, came from in your parents? I mean, were they around people? Did they have disabled people?
There are some. I have some aunts and uncles or cousins that have disability. Actually, cousins that have disabilities, but I really think it came from not that, but my dad was raised, and my mom was, especially my dad. My dad was raised by the guy who was a truck driver, a farmer, a factory worker. He was you do whatever you got to do to get through life, and you figure it out. My mom was raised by first generation immigrants to the U.S.
Where were they from?
Ireland.
Oh, get out of here!
Yeah,
same with me.
Yeah.
On my mom's side.
All right, yeah. Both my on my mom's side, both my grandma and grandpa came from Ireland. So they were raised in a time where you just figure it out.
Yeah.
And
they were hardcore back then.
Yeah.
That Irish man.
And so as much as their families were very conservative, my dad was progressive in his thinking.
In the 70s by a long shot. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was a Shriners Hospital kid, which is what allows me to walk. So props to Shriners. But at 13, my parents had me helping make decisions about my surgeries in my life. There was a discussion about a procedure they wanted to the hospital wanted to do, and my dad goes, that's really up to John, because it's going to be a lifelong decision for him. The way it worked back then is you showed up on a Friday, and on that Friday they check you in and all that good stuff. On Monday they do rounds, they do all your tests over the weekend, and Tuesday or Wednesday you have surgery. Oftentimes your parents went home over the weekend because there wasn't anywhere to stay. So my parents dropped me off on a Friday, and we did all this stuff, and they went home. And on the Sunday, the chief surgeon walks up and he goes, "So John," he goes, "so we're doing this procedure." And I'm like, "No, we're not. My parents and I agreed we're doing this procedure." And he's like, No, I've decided we're doing different. And
you decided.
Oh, he decided, exactly. And it was a call to my dad. I was 13, and I was in tears. I will admit that. But I called my dad and I said, "The doctor says we're doing this." He goes, "No, we're not." I'm like, "Well, he says we are." And And I'm like, and when we do rounds tomorrow morning, he's going to tell all the doctors that's what we're doing. So rounds start at 6 a.m. My dad was in my room at 5:30. He drove middle of the night, was in my room in Chicago. And when the doctor came in, the doctor was kind of surprised that my dad was there. And he's like, what's going on? My dad goes, well, you told John yesterday we're doing this. Yeah, he goes, no, that's not what John said he wanted. That's not what we all agreed to on Friday. We're going to go do this. Not everybody with a disability has parents that involve them that much in their lives. It's oftentimes it's the doctors, the lawyers, it's everybody who wore a tie is making decisions for you.
Sure.
And my parents,
well, they're the authority,
right? My parents didn't operate that way.
Hmm.
Actually, when I went to work at the league the first time, my boss wore a jacket and tie every day, and my first job was working with families who had kids with disabilities, which was cool. And I rarely wore a shirt and tie. And I think he thought it was just me being obnoxious. And then one day I went,
rebelling.
Yeah. I went, you know what? I said, when I grew up, anybody who wore a shirt and tie was a doctor, a lawyer, a therapist. They were the people that were telling me what to do versus asking me how we do things together. The next day you walked in without a tie, which was just awesome. Yeah, it was just awesome.
Well, so as you're growing up and going through these things, I don't, who can say in hindsight if attitudinally that was vindictiveness or superiority complex. With physicians they call it a God complex oftentimes.
Yep.
I'm just wondering with you did you feel that your parents were empowering you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you were able, because a 13-year-old kid, particularly back then, 13-year-old boy with a disability to stand up to a physician is almost unheard of.
Yeah. No, my parents were all about, this is your life. You have to make decisions about it because we're going to be your parents for our entire lives, but we're not going to be there for your entire life.
And how many surgeries have you had to?
I had 9 surgeries on my leg.
Wow.
Yeah.
From what age is about?
First one was at 3, last one was at 19.
Wow. So. And attitudinally, how do you think that affected you? Because and the reason why I'm asking that, I mean, obviously, things weren't all gumdrops and roses at that point, but it's funny how circumstance can break people or make people. And I'm just wondering if it seems like you were beyond your years when you were a young man. You're 13 years old. You're standing up going, wait, no. This isn't what we agreed to.
Right.
How do you think you came through all that? Because that had to have been demotivating at the very least.
Sure. So there have been dark days.
Yeah.
Overall, I mean, it was, this is your life. You got to own who you are. It's not about pity. It's not about heroism. It's not about my favorite word to say to shock people. It's not about inspiration porn. I'm not amazing because of the daily stuff I do. I get up out of bed. That's not amazing. I'm not to be pitied. I'm born with this disability, but it's all I know. We do a lot of things at the league, and one of the things we do is we teach people who acquire disabilities how to do things differently. It's called independent living skills. The reality is I grew up doing everything differently. I didn't learn how to do anything differently. I just do everything differently. So for me, I've probably only wallowed in self-pity once or twice. I had a doctor when I was in college that I pretty much blew off a semester of college because he goes, you realize you're probably not going to be walking in 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, it happened twice. It happened once when I don't remember it. Once, my parents were told that. My parents were told, your son's not going to walk. This was before I had any of the surgeries. My parents weren't satisfied with that, and they connected with Shriners, and we did all that. I walked into that pediatrician's office when I was 18 and was kind of snarky. I said, hi, you don't remember me. I said, but my name's John, and you told my parents I'd never walk, and well, here I am. But the one in college got me because I was a typical college student. I mean, I wanted what everybody else wanted. I wanted college. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have a job. And suddenly, everything I knew, this guy said, yeah, you won't be walking by the time you're out of college. Maybe within a couple years after that, you'll be in a wheelchair.
Wow.
I went, oh God. So I blew nearly a semester of college because of that. Because it got set in my head, and I'm like, so what's it worth?
What do you think got you back out of it?
My dad told me to get my ass up and go do shit.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When he heard why, he's like, no, you know better than that.
Yeah.
He goes, you know better than that. You know you're worth more than you know you're worth more than even walking on your leg. You know, if your back gave out or your leg gave out and you couldn't walk anymore, you're worth more than that. So I went, all right, you win. And so I did.
Wow. See, it's funny because I think, we've seemed to, as a society, we've strayed away from the home, you know, as far as, the governance of the kid, right? But obviously your parents instilled something like that in you, that fight.
Oh, yeah.
The underdog.
Oh, yeah. And I was treated like every other kid. You know, I mowed the lawn every weekend, and regardless of whether I wanted to or not. And
well, trust me, I didn't want to either.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it helped my dad do things, whatever needed done. I was the assistant when he was working on cars. My dad would work on cars all the time. You know, it was go get me the wrench or go.
That was his hobby, or was it necessity?
Sometimes it was necessity. Sometimes it was a necessity, but then he was also a Shriner and bought a dune buggy. So then it became a hobby.
Switching gears back to the league.
Sure.
When you're talking about, serving everyone, how can you balance serving everyone and not making that serve no one? And the reason why I put it that way is that if you cast, sometimes, I've worked in my whole life in advertising. Yeah. So if we're casting too broad a net, I might not hit anybody. How do you focus your initiatives to know that you're making an impact?
A lot of it is the way we collaborate with others. So, I said we serve, anybody. So it's vision loss, or people who are blind, people who are deaf, people with physical disabilities, people with intellectual disabilities, and then people with mental health issues. But we don't duplicate what others are doing. We are known. If you asked our nonprofit peers, we're known as advocates. That's what we do. We are the advocates in town, and we work with others that provide services that we don't, because I don't want to duplicate services. We have enough issues with meeting the needs of the roughly 100,000 people with disabilities in Northeast Indiana. We don't need to make work for ourselves.
Well, so do you consider the league to be more of a fluid organization in that it knows where to flow to fix what the challenges are?
Yeah, the really cool thing is we are so community based that it's looking at what we hear people with disabilities need. We do surveys of folks, we ask them questions, we talk with our peers, and we figure out where the gaps are that make sense for us to do. There are some gaps that don't make sense for us to do, or somebody else is out there doing it. It's how can we encourage them to do it better versus us start it up ourselves. That's always been part of what we did. I've somehow been involved with the league now for 30 years, either as a staff member or board member, and now a staff member again. But it's always been, look at what we do really well. And if we don't think we can do it really well, if we think somebody does it better, get out of the way and let them do it better. Figure out how we can connect more of our folks to services that are already there. And then for those services that aren't there, let's see what we can do to bring those services up.
Barrett McNagny is a neighbor to us as well as a sponsor of this podcast. Barrett McNagny is a law firm that's located in downtown Fort Wayne, and they were founded in 1876. Now, I'll do some quick math for you. That's almost 150 years of experience. That's 149 years longer than this podcast has been around. Along with their experience, they also have a wide range of practice areas. They are best known for their trusted legal counsel where and when you need it. If you're interested in their services or want to learn more, be sure to check out the link in the description below. Now back to the episode.
We talked about your parents and your passion about equal opportunity.
Yeah.
The first question that I have around that is, and please excuse my ignorance in any of this, is the terminology.
Yeah.
And, I hear enablement, and first you hear disabled, then you hear enabled, and then you hear these other things. Can you talk a little about the terminology and what that means to you?
So over the course of I almost did a stand-up routine on this. So over the course of my life, I've been crippled, I've been handicapped, I've been handy-capable, which I thought was a hardware store. I've been
I think
disabled.
Dewey Best owns them. I'm not
exactly,
sure.
Yeah. The terms span the gamut anymore. Typically, the way we always defer is it's a person with a disability or a person who uses a wheelchair. We always go person first, unless the person we're talking to says, no, I identify as my disability first. Because there's an entire disability culture or a disability identity. So for a lot of people with autism, it's I'm an autistic person because they want to identify that as part of that unique part of who they are. I grew up with my disability is part of me. It is not all of me. which is kind of, it probably humbled me in some ways, and it gives me an ego in some ways. But I grew up as I'm a person regardless of this disability. If you look on my LinkedIn profile, it says that I'm I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and I'm just a guy trying to make a difference. And I have a disability, because that's just part of who I am. It gives me a unique perspective. When I look at something, I have a unique perspective. You have levered door handles. Yay, you have levered door handles. That's a unique perspective I have, because I know the value of levered door handle. But it's my disability gives me a frame of reference for how I look at the world.
When you look back, and maybe those darker times when you were a kid, and you were saying, I can't play baseball or I can't play football or anything like that. Do you ever think back to those times? Of those feelings, or
occasionally,
What would you say to your young self now? Now that, look, you're president and CEO.
I would say it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Focus on the stuff you can do well. You're right. Didn't play baseball. Played flag football out in the backyard, or tackle football actually, until one of my friends got knocked out because as we tackled, his head went into my prosthetic leg, and knocked him out. Okay, that was the end of football.
I was going to say,
I'm not out to kill my friends.
Weapon.
Exactly, I'm not out to kill my friends. But swimming, scuba diving, jet skiing, trick boarding, the water is my equalizer. So that's my parents took me to swimming lessons, and then bought an above ground pool. They bought an above ground pool from a neighbor that was putting in an in ground pool, and it was 3 doors down, and literally 30 people picked up this above ground pool and carried it down in its shape, because I had a deck around it. Didn't take it apart, carried it. It sat in the house that I grew up in for the rest of my life. Wow. Until I moved out, and I didn't move out of my house till I was 40. My parents moved to Florida, and my wife and I bought the house.
Wow.
Because we were getting ready to start our family, as my mom moved down to Florida with my dad. And so I had that same pool until I was, probably from the time that I was 7 or 8 years old until I was 40.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it was cool.
So the other thing that's on the list here that I have to get to is DeafLink.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
So I think I don't know enough about it, only what I've read, but it seems so important that these are the types of things, initiatives, technologies, whatever, that are solving problems out there. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
So DeafLink has been in Fort Wayne since the 90s. It is a program of the league now. It was a program of another nonprofit that went through some restructuring, and when they restructured, DeafLink wasn't going to find home. DeafLink is a program that serves people who are deaf in a variety of ways. One, we are the largest nonprofit sign language interpreting agency in Northeast Indiana, doing 20,000 plus hours of sign language interpreting every year. The environments include, healthcare, so in a hospital setting. God knows, even if you're deaf, you don't want to have one of your family members having to interpret for you when the doctor goes, "Hey, you have cancer." You just don't want that. You want a professional interpreter. So we're interpreting in hospitals, in school settings, legal. We're interpreting at concerts, which is just the coolest thing.
What?
Yeah. So our DeafLink director that came on board almost 2 years ago said, we need to do more with the arts. And we went, okay.
Yeah.
So last year, I think we did 15 concerts. When Foreigner came to town, we had DeafLink interpreters. Yeah, we had DeafLink interpreters at the Coliseum for Foreigner. Winter Jam, which is a huge Christian concert, multiple, I think it was like 12 performers. We have DeafLink interpreters there.
Wow.
It is the coolest thing. And I will tell you that oftentimes an interpreter, a sign language interpreter, outperforms the performer.
Yeah.
Because sign language isn't just using your fingers. It is facial expression and movement. And we do a blues bash almost every year at the league. And one of our performers that had been here a couple times, the first time we put an interpreter on stage with him, he goes, "Dude, I can't compete with her."
Yeah.
He's like, "She is awesome."
Expression.
Yeah, expression.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things with disability is isolation, and isolation, the biggest thing is communication. For people who are deaf, that's a big issue. So that's why when DeafLink was looking for a home, the league took DeafLink in. And so it is sign language interpreting. It is teaching people American Sign Language classes. So we teach classes. We partner with the YMCA and teach classes at a couple of their branches on a ongoing basis.
Excellent.
It is, some case management, some advocacy, helping people who are deaf really understand what others are saying to them and help them navigate whatever system they're trying to get through. It is a growing population. In the last year, DeafLink and our Inclusion Institute helped the city of Fort Wayne remember that every time they do a press conference, there should be an interpreter.
Yes.
Because they have a population there that needs that.
Obviously, you guys have evolved from your time with Helen Keller. I mean,
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So what do you think the next evolution of it is? Because you guys are providing all these services.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the next evolution of the league is going to be?
So the league is going to grow and expand. We're going to get a little more into the tech space, I think. The question becomes, how can AI benefit people with disabilities? I am no expert on AI. I toy around with it, and it's helped me do some things. But it is, how can AI be used to help explain something that's complex to somebody with an intellectual disability?
Right.
If somebody with an intellectual disability can go, hey, summarize this for me so I can understand it, and suddenly they can understand stuff they couldn't understand before. I think AI used appropriately is going to give great independence to a large number of people. And, there are things that were created for people with disabilities that you and I take as commonplace every day. Voice to text was actually, a multi-$1,000 program you loaded onto your computer. So if you couldn't type, you could speak into your computer and it would print words.
Oh, yeah.
You and I use voice to text every day.
Yeah. These technological solutions are getting so much better and faster. Voice to text years ago was horrible.
Awful.
Yeah. And now what you're seeing is integration with, one of our communities is the orthopedic capital of the world.
Yep.
And it just seems like if you integrate AI with robotics, with initiatives and movements like you guys are doing, it seems like there's going to be an answer out there somewhere, or at least a next evolution of better abilities to communicate, better abilities to participate, is probably the way I was thinking about it.
So my prosthetic leg has a computer in it. It senses the terrain that I'm on, and it decides what kind of resistance to give me. If I'm on a flat surface, it lets me walk as fast as I want. If I'm going down a hill, up a step, it gives me resistance.
Get out of here.
Yeah. My first experience was 10 years
You're like
ago.
the $6 million man in front of me.
Iron Man.
$5 million, yeah.
Yeah. Iron Man's my superhero. But yeah, and it's the coolest thing. And I was convinced 10 years ago to try it out. Because I nothing like that before that. And the technology just continues to grow. The only sucky thing about it is, it's like a cell phone. If I don't plug it in, the battery dies, and then it doesn't work. So I got to plug it in every few days so to make sure it charges up.
But it lasts that long, huh?
Actually, it says it lasts 4 days, and it's just at 4 days. 4
Wow.
days. Yep. 4 days. It beeps at me and vibrates and goes, "Hey, you need to plug me in, or I'm going to shut off."
That's so cool.
Yeah, it actually is really cool. Yeah.
Do you guys ever get to hear testimonials from people? Do people come back to you and tell you how you've impacted their lives?
Oh yeah, all the time.
I mean, obviously, that's got to be just a wonderful feeling.
It's awesome.
But that's got to be the one thing that keeps you at this, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting if you ask my staff why they do this. Some do it because they didn't have the advocates with them growing up. I do it because I had the advocates with me growing up. I experienced something that other folks didn't. We had a guy just recently who is going through one of our programs that has an intellectual disability and lives in a group home. And after he learned some things from us, he went back to his group home and said, I want to become emancipated. And he didn't agree with the decisions that were being made for him by his guardian. So he fought to get emancipated and got emancipated.
Wow.
Because he's fully capable of making decisions with some supported decision making. And it's just the coolest thing that he did that. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I said, to me, a lot of these benefits are benefits of empowerment, but they're a surprise because you could have knocked me over with a feather when I heard that him talking about people making eye contact because it was the first time in their life that people looked back at them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
I mean, aren't we supposed to feel that way? Aren't we supposed to do these things?
We are.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting better at it. And I think a lot of it comes down to what I've watched is terminology.
Yeah.
And I just think that if people knew, if everybody could experience the other side of life once in a while and see the struggles that people have, and just for a day understand that, one of the most rewarding things I ever did was I was a college athlete. The finals of the Special Olympics, the National Special Olympics, was at my university back then.
Oh, cool.
And that was part of my scholarship, was to work it.
Okay.
And it was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done.
Yeah.
And just to see the joy on those competitors, they don't, everybody out there doesn't think like the rest of us. We were cutthroats. I'm competing with people that are on steroids and everything else.
Yeah.
These people are out there to have fun and compete, and they go back and they get each other to help carry them across the finish line and stuff. That's what it's supposed to be about, and I love what you guys are doing.
Thanks.
How would people get a hold of you, you guys in particular? How would they contact you, and what types of things would they contact you with?
So our website is the-league.org. There's 15 programs and services that are out there. It is everything from programs that serve kids with disabilities and their parents, helping them get what they need in school, all the way to programs that are helping seniors with dealing with anything from insurance to the later stages of life, and a lot of stuff in between. It's check out the website. Give us a call at 260-441-0551. We have a great information referral coordinator, Brenda. She'll talk to whoever comes on, and she'll ask them some questions and get them pointed in the right direction. Sometimes it's a direction within our organization, and sometimes it's like, you know what, we need to refer you over here to this other organization because they do it better. And that's exactly what we do.
Okay. Well, we're coming to the end now where we do the rapid wrap up.
Bring it.
So these are,
Let's go.
I need you to be ready for it. Okay. Favorite weekend activity in Northeast Indiana?
The lake. Because there's only one lake in Indiana. But
just that one.
There's just that one. It is going to the lake with my family.
Okay. If you had an unlimited supply of food or drink in your office, break room, what would it be?
Tacos.
Really?
Yeah.
What's your favorite taco place?
Happy Gnome, because I can get just a wide variety of tacos.
Oh, okay. Your favorite part of your job?
Connecting with people. Telling the league story out in the community. That is what I love doing. This is, I worked, like I said, this is my second tour at the league. And my job is to talk about all the success that our staff make happen.
Coney Dog or DeBrand's Chocolates?
Coney Dog.
Okay.
Yeah.
A surprising fact about you that most people don't know.
Working my way through college, I repossessed cars.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Remind me not to get
true story, man.
I'm not going to get in a wrestling match with you then. All right, fine. And then the last one, which came up at the last second because of your socks.
Yep.
I have to ask, Star Wars or Star Trek?
I'm a sci-fi junkie. Star Wars for storyline, Star Trek for the tech.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, I got to tell you, it is an honor and a pleasure, and I am so grateful to Ryan, if I don't shout out to him enough on this one, because he's an egotistical egomaniac like me. But it's an honor to meet you. I love what you guys are doing, and thank you so much for all you're doing for the community.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.